Imagine feeling excluded and separated from others based on something you could not prevent or control. Imagine not having the ability or know-how to seek treatment for your pain and suffering. Imagine suffering alone. This is the reality for millions of people living with mental illness.
My uncle struggles with schizophrenia.
I have ADHD.
I struggle with anxiety disorder.
There was actually a kid my freshman year that committed suicide in the dorm of another one of my friends.
He thinks that the government is watching him and he can't watch TV because he thinks that it's recording his conversations. He hasn't had a haircut for about 5 years. He doesn't brush his hair. He doesn't bathe regularly. He doesn't wash his clothes.
ADHD is hard. It's really hard to just focus on things. So studying's a real struggle with me. I get distracted very easily, especially when reading. So just as I'm reading, I can see a word and then I can go off on a train of thoughts for a good 20 minutes. And then studying just becomes a very, very long process. It's very difficult to remember things because you just start thinking of so many different things.
It makes me very sad because he's not at Christmas anymore, because we're scared to be around him because he tries to hurt other people, but it's not his fault because he has a mental illness.
Both anxiety and depression are very common in adult population, and by adult I just mean anyone over the age of 18. In the United States, 1 in 4 Americans will suffer from depression in their lifetime. A huge percentage of individuals suffer from various degrees of anxiety, and a lot of times individuals are reluctant to come in and to seek help because they feel like, oh, this is something I should just be able to do on my own and get better. And so unfortunately sometimes in those instances they're really suffering in silence. They're not able to function, not able to get out of bed, not able to take a shower and do the things, remember to eat, the things that we all take for granted because we're not struggling with a major mental illness right now. The sad reality is that it will depend on the type of insurance that a person has, and many insurance programs either don't cover mental illness as something that they will treat, or they cover it to a far lesser extent than they would if you had diabetes or high blood pressure.
Oftentimes, the mentally ill are treated as inferior to people who are unaffected by mental illness. Oftentimes, this isn't done maliciously, but rather an act of the subconscious. How often have we heard negative comments or seen negative portrayals of mental illness in movies, television shows, or books? We may even be guilty ourselves of describing people as crazy, insane, or even labeling people as their disorder, junkie, or schizo.
But it's not something that folks can always easily wrap their minds around and understand. Well, how could somebody end up being depressed? There is still that kind of mentality out there in the United States that, oh, you're just having a bad day, so just snap out of it and everything will be better. Well, if you're just having a bad day, that'll probably work. If you have a full-blown depression, you may not be able to get out of bed. You may not even find your boots. It comes back to education and awareness, understanding what a mental illness is.
They'll make fun basically of the idea of mental illness. There is this idea that mental illness is just some sort of taboo subject. You're not allowed to talk about it in serious terms. If you talk about it at all, it has to be in some sort of joking term. Anytime I've heard anybody bring it up seriously, everybody else within the conversation will start to skirt around the subject, try and get out of it as much as possible.
The chapter of NAMI here at the University of Kentucky is dedicated to advocating for accessible mental health services for everyone, to spreading awareness of mental illness, and reversing the stigma surrounding mental illness around campus. Their goal is to create a more educated student body that will advocate for fair treatment of the mentally ill. They want to one day create a nationwide band of students working together to press for change of social stigma, more funding, and improved systems of care for the mentally ill.
I have talked with people in the community that have said, I'm very thankful for NAMI Bluegrass because I didn't know where to turn, I didn't know what to do when I found out my son was diagnosed in his early 20s with schizophrenia, or my daughter's been struggling with bipolar disorder and drug abuse, and I didn't know the resources and I didn't know what to do, but I was able to talk with somebody at NAMI Bluegrass, and they were able to point me in the right direction. And I also got support from myself and my family, so I know that it's made a real impact. The thing I love most about NAMI is if they see a need, they'll offer help, or if somebody contacts them and says, hey, are you willing to come in and do a talk to help educate us about mental illness, help us recognize issues that maybe are going on within our family, and to make us more aware of potential resources and things, not only with NAMI Bluegrass, but other things, you know, in Lexington and Fayette County, that they'll do that. I mean, they have done just astronomically amazing things over the last 2 decades. I think the only negative I would say is that they would probably like to have even more people involved in NAMI.
Together, we can make a difference, not only here on campus, but also in the lives of all those affected by mental illness.